Welcome to MCN. We're at Portimao in Portugal for the launch of two new Hondas. We're just going to talk about one in this video and another one in the other video. And as you can see behind me, we're going to start with the CBR600RR. So this bike stopped production in the UK in 2017 because of Euro 4. They didn't bother to evolve it. But it came out again in Japan, Australia, in Asia in 2021, which is more or less this bike, and it proved to be so popular that they decided to bring it to the UK, and it kind of fills the gap in Honda's range between the CBR650R and the blade with all the R's. So this is the RR. So hasn't really got much competition. The ZX6R Kawasaki, and of course there's all these middleweight parallel twin sports bikes that have come out, which don't really come close to a Supersport bike like that. But what I'm going to do is just run through. We've had a really detailed presentation, so I won't bore you with everything, but I've made some notes and I'm going to put my readers on and just tell you a few things about this bike. So I used to have one of these as a long-termer in 2003 when it first came out, the under-seat pipe 600RR. It's got a special place in my heart. I crashed it twice in the first week of me owning it, and I got another one and lived with it all year. It was amazing. It's an instant MCN group test winner. It's won multiple championships and races over the years. I mean, it's one very special bike, and it kind of drifted out of favour towards the end of its life. You know, you had things like the Daytona 675, which stole its thunder, and it never really evolved. And really now it is still essentially the same bike. It's kind of based on the 2017 bike. But let's run through a few changes. So it's still a 599cc inline 4, makes 119 bhp, 14,250 revs. That engine, as you may remember, was the control engine for Moto 2 between 2010 when it was first invented to 2018 when Triumph took over. So this engine now has got a load of Euro 5 plus mods. So it's got new cams, new valve springs, new crank, new valve timing, lots of work done to the exhaust and the exhaust can, which is 400 grams lighter. It's got modifications to the intakes. It's got bigger throttle bodies, 44mm instead of 40. It's now got an assist and slip clutch and the rear sprocket up to 42 teeth. So if it's up, it must mean it's shorter geared. So it should have a bit more pep. Still the same chassis we know and love. It's an aluminium frame. The swing arm's 150 grams lighter. It's got an electronic steering damper, 41mm shower big piston forks, and the forks themselves are 15mm longer, so they poke right out of the top yokes, and that basically allows race teams to lift the front of the bike up when their fancy fast riders are hard on the brakes, and it stops the rear lifting. So you've got more adjustability with the suspension in that way. And really, one of the reasons this bike's been revived is for Supersport racing, which is kind of had a bit of a renaissance lately. Now they've allowed other types of bikes and bigger capacity bikes in, and it's all controlled with electronics. So, you know, the Honda's got a good chance of doing well again, which is really good. 4-piston, I've written down Tokyo calipers, but I'm sure I mean Tokyo calipers. Good old predictive text there. 310mm discs. It comes on Dunlop Road Sport 2 tyres, and it's slightly lighter than it was before. 193 kilos, was 196. Slightly lazier steering geometry as well for racing. And I suppose one of the big changes is the electronics. This has got all the new electronics which you would have seen on the RC213 VS road bike, Grand Prix replica at the beginning, and the current blade. So it's got 6-axis blade, Bosch IMU, 3-way adjustable quick shifter, 3 riding modes, 2 custom riding modes where you can adjust the power 5 ways, engine braking 3 ways, traction control 9 ways including off, wheelie control 3 ways. It's got cornering ABS with a 2.5 kilo light ABS unit than the old unit, with rear lift control, 4.2-inch coloured dash, so that's going to look very different from CBRs of old when you're looking down at it. The style is more or less the same. Honda say this is it's got a very low coefficient of drag, 0.555, whatever that means, with the rider in a racing tuck. That would be a very small rider, I would imagine. And it's got wings. So you might have seen these bikes racing at the TT and sort of wonder where they came from, because they never used to have wings, but they would have been racing like the Asia CBR600s, but now the UK ones have got them. And they say it's less for wheelie control and more for what happens when you release the brakes under hard braking, for stability. And the tank is 10 mil lower, so you can get tucked in a little bit better under that little small screen. It's still 18 litres. They say it's 52 mpg, 203 mile tank range, which isn't bad. The tank's slimmer, so you can cuddle it easier. The belly pan extends further back towards the rear wheel to smooth out the airflow, and it comes in black or the HRC colours you see behind. Loads of accessories. You've got an ACU race kit you can buy, which has got different ECU, wiring loom, head gasket, big radiator, race exhaust, front and rear suspension, fancy brake discs, and then more for kind of road riders. You've got a racing pack accessories, which has got some cosmetic goodies and a seat hump. You've got a comfort pack, which has got a tail pack, heated grips and a USB charger. And apart from that, that's about it. I talked about the rivals. So interestingly, so the price of this bike is £10,499. Where are we now? Where are we now, Joseph? Beginning of March? Beginning of March 2024. So 10,499. And its only rival, the Kawasaki, is 10,599. So Honda have been canny really and undercut the Kawasaki by £100. Kawasaki's also revived for this year. We're going to be doing a group test in the future. But in the meantime, we're going to be riding around the track tomorrow. So I don't think the weather's going to be that great, but fingers crossed it's going to be okay. So we'll check back in the morning and let you see the bike in the light. But I think we're going to get something to eat now, Joe. And,
pretty hungry.
Pretty hungry, yeah. And we'll see you in the morning. So it's the morning after the night before, here in Portimao pit garages. Over here, you'll see some lovely slick shod wheels, which we'd have loved to have been riding on today, but it's raining. And it does that a lot in Portugal. But we're going to be riding the CBR600RR today. The bikes are all on wets, on warmers, as you see here. It's not the end of the world. It actually reminds me of my time instructing at the Ron Haslam Race School on a wet Donington pit lane surrounded by CBR600s, so I kind of feel at home. The bike, I mean, it's lovely to see the CBR again. You know, it's been a long time away, and I think like the updates to the styling and the wings and the way it's finished, just superb. But one thing I want to do before we start is one of the reasons why this sort of the sales dropped off towards the end is because they're quite small bikes and a lot of people found them a little bit too tiny. So are they as small as we remember? So I'm 6 foot and it is quite cramped, but not too bad. I mean, the bars are relatively splayed, the foot pegs aren't too high, but the screen is really, really low. I mean, you're going to have to be tucked right in to get underneath, although this tank's lower, isn't it, as we found out last night, so it's probably a little bit easier. So yeah, so the plan for this morning, we're going to be riding a Fireblade later, which will be a separate video. Well, the plan this morning is we're going to get 3 sessions on the bike. We're going to get just like a warm-up session following John McGuinness, and then 2 full sessions on our own. It's not really enough. It's only really going to give us a taste of what this bike's like, but it should be pretty familiar. I've ridden lots of these before, but it'd be interesting to see how the new electronics change things, if the wings make any difference, and if it's that kind of, you know, single-minded screaming Supersport bike we remember, or if it's actually a little bit more friendly and usable. You know, would you have one of these over an Aprilia RS660, for example? So we're going to have our rider briefing now and then get leathered up and get out on the track.
Oh mate, how was that?
Well, it's really good actually. The conditions actually helped, because going deliberately slow, you know, you jump on these things and go flat out and you don't really get to sense their character. But what surprises me is that it's got a relative amount of grunt. It's not totally peaky. The suspension's plush, it's very easy to ride. Everything's really good, but the best thing really in these slippery conditions is that it's got ABS and traction control, and that's a massive bonus to your confidence really. Not that I ever touch them, but it's just nice knowing they're there. So, you know, and it's relatively roomy as well. I can move around on it, it's not too bad at all. So, yeah, I can't wait for the next session now.
So Neevesy, that was your second session on the CBR. What do you reckon?
But before I tell you, what do they sound like down the straight?
Absolutely mental. What were you, fifth gear or did you get?
Fifth gear flat out down here, yeah.
Sounded really good.
I mean, I'm riding like my mum for the rest of the circuit because it is really slippery, and it's going to be a long day, so there's no need for any heroics right now. But I mean, I can't get anywhere close to the limit of this bike. It's fantastic. It feels like a race bike, but it's nice and plush. It's perhaps a tiny bit too small for me. I struggle a little bit to move around the bike, and I've caught the gear lever a few times where my big old size 10s have just kind of brushed the lever a little bit. But yeah, I mean, in terms of having fun, I think the bigger the bikes are, the more powerful they are, the less fun you have, basically. And when you've got something a little bit smaller, manageable like this, it's amazing, even in the wet like this.
And who do you think's going to buy this bike, and who do you think this bike will really suit?
Well, I think that's a good question. I think it's going to be more of a track day bike now than an everyday bike like it used to be. And I think it now, even though they used to be like as common as Ford Cortinas back in the day, I think now it's created its own niche. You know, you've got these middleweight parallel twins, which are a little bit wishy-washy, but they're nice and they're roomy. But I think this has kind of created its niche now in a you know, they used to be everywhere, like I say, and Supersport bikes used to be everywhere, and people got a bit bored with them. But I think it would be kind of maybe a track day rider, a little bit smaller than me, maybe. They'll have a lot of fun on it.
Bike, what would you do?
If it was my bike, I would probably just do what you would normally do with a track day bike, maybe shorten the gearing a little bit, because UK tracks are quite small. You know, if I had the money, I'd put suspension on it. But to be honest, out the crate, there's not a lot you'd want to change. I'd probably put some pattern bodywork on it, just in case.
Fantastic.
That was the third and final session on the CBR600RR, and the sun actually came out, and some of the track ride was still on wets. And really then I just sort of got a taste of what the bike's all about. You know, this bike just loves to be revved to the moon and back. It likes big corner speed, it just loves to be thrashed, and when you're kind of just, you know, going slowly in the wet, it doesn't really feel alive. But I got a little glimpse of it then. But I think we'll need to ride it again really in the dry conditions to get a proper sense of what it's like. But what it is like is not really a lot different to how it's ever been. Hasn't really evolved. You know, I'm really glad it's got all those electronics. When it was damp, it's sort of extra peace of mind when you've got ABS and traction control. That was really, really good. But in terms of the riding experience, it's very, very similar to before, which is good. For me personally, I think I'm a little bit too big for the bike. I'm catching my foot on the gear lever sometimes, and I can't quite get around the bike as I'd like, or really tuck in down the straights. So I think it would probably suit a slightly smaller rider. Maybe I'm 6 foot, so 5'10" and below maybe. But it's just so exciting. I mean, I suppose the big questions that come up for me are, how does it compare to the competition? So its only real competitor is the ZX6R inline 4, which has also come out for 2024. I'd say the Honda is better. It's a nicer thing. It's beautifully made. It's a little bit more friendly and plush to ride. The ZX6R is an angry track bike. It's got really short gearing. You can almost pull away in 6th gear on that thing. And it's extremely cramped, even more cramped than the CBR. So, you know, if I was going to buy a 600, I'd buy one of these. In terms of how it compares to kind of those middleweight sports bikes, I think it's much, much more exciting. You know, you're going to get a bigger hit when you open the throttle, but it's a little bit more highly strung. So I would perhaps go for an Aprilia RS660 on the road, just because it's roomier and it's got more grunt, and it's just kind of, it doesn't beg you to ride it hard all the time. But yeah, the sun's come out. We're gonna sign off now because we're gonna be riding the Fireblade this afternoon, and you can see all about that in our next video. But if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, and we'll see you again for more like this very soon.